I won't forget. See, who was it? Pam will not be here today, nor will Natalie. She had to fly to New York with her husband. He's got glaucoma,
Oh,
and they want to get a second opinion in
Parkinson's, neurological disease.
a doctor issue.
yeah.
Okay,
So that's where they're at.
so they must have somebody they really trust.
Yeah, apparently so. And, I don't know if how bad it is, but apparently it's bad enough that they make the trip, so. But what can you do? What can you do?
What time is it? It's after 11, isn't it?
It's just right at 11.
At 11, okay.
Yeah.
That clock I've got here is fast, okay.
On your device, select the name that matches
10:59.
screen.
No, thank you, Rabbi. It was a rough trip.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Thank you. It was interesting that there was a young rabbi. She just got out of rabbinical school 2 years ago. And she's like the assistant rabbi at B'nai Huda, the large temple there in Kansas City. And I mean, this woman did an outstanding job. Never knew my aunt, but from what she was, family told her all these different stories and stuff. So she really did a great job, and she had a beautiful voice. So
No, that's
what it is.
good. Lovely though. Well,
Yeah. So it looks like we're gonna have just the 6 of us.
Never know.
Well, why don't we go ahead and get started, and then whoever comes in can catch up. Let's do the blessing first. Baruch atah
Adonai
Eloheinu melech
Eloheinu
haolam
Share
asher kishanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu azot divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of
ruler
the
of the
world,
world.
Who
who
has
has
sanctified
sanctified us
Sanctify
with
us
your
with your
commandments
commandments
and
and
commanded us to engage in the words of Torah.
Torah.
And we have Marley. Hi.
See, we got a new part. We
Yay!
thought we
Welcome,
reached our
welcome.
quorum there. And
Thank you.
oh,
We just started. So
I could tell.
we're on page, let's see here,
113.
113. And
Well,
we're gonna talk about, go ahead.
whatever that is, I don't have it.
You don't
Oh, you
have
don't
the
have-
readings.
Did I not get you?
I just started today.
Okay, all right. Well, you can just listen and I'll make sure I forward you. I get your email address so I can forward you the attachments.
Thank you.
You're
All right,
welcome.
let me see if I can send her the attachments
Okay,
now.
because I don't have her email.
Yes, okay. All right, Marion, I'm gonna forward you the attachment
Okay.
and
And then I'll copy that and put her on the
okay, I'll send a copy to Steve as well, so he'll be
Please.
able to see your
yes, sir.
you want your Yahoo or your
Yahoo,
Gmail?
please. Either way, it
Yahoo.
doesn't matter.
Yahoo.
Maybe you can explain to Marion that what we're reading out of.
Okay, we're reading out of a Torah commentary. There we go. For our times, and it's by Harvey Fields. We're in Leviticus now.
Okay.
So, but you can buy the books you typically used through Amazon, pretty really inexpensively. So,
Okay.
okay.
But I just sent you the photocopies. If you download that quickly, there's
I'm
about
waiting
3 or
for it
4.
to get here. I'm in my inbox. So
Okay.
I'm sorry.
there it is. No.
Found
I
it?
said I'm in my inbox waiting for it to appear.
Okay,
Oh, hold on, I'm just gonna get a different book.
So there's a series of, was it 4 books?
Three
uh,
books.
three,
Three
Books in-
books.
Yeah, and so we
I got it.
we read the different Torah portions out of the, explanations of the Torah out of this. Okay,
It was written essentially for youngsters studying for their B'nai Mitzvah.
Right.
it's commentary a lot, a
More
commentary.
so than, yeah. But it gives you a synopsis of what we're talking about. Without actually having to go through the reading in the Tanakh. So,
And generally what we do is we wind up trying to relate it back to modern times.
present time.
Right, what's going on today?
Yep,
Okay,
because sometimes it gets pretty lively.
okay, I'm ready.
But we know that we're being recorded, okay?
Yes, we are being recorded.
So
And
be
we
Yeah,
try
careful
that's
what you
to-
say.
we try to stay away from politics as best we can.
That's fine with me.
Okay.
Okay,
Rabbi, it's
Richard's
taking
here.
a while to get here.
so good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh,
Rabbi.
and we,
So,
and my personal physician has shown up as well.
Eric,
Every time I see Rich, he gives me a full exam, checks all my injuries,
Oh, boy.
I told him he's gonna
announces
live to
himself.
108.
mm,
He said he's very, very happy with my progress.
Good.
good.
Physically,
How's
psychiatrically,
the
maybe
knee
not.
doing?
What?
How's the knee doing, Rabbi?
Pretty good.
And the ribs,
The ribs are pretty good.
they're sore.
They're a little sore.
And remember, if you ride your bike, special safety glasses, helmet, arms, wrist, and knee.
Knee pads, yes.
Protectors and bubble wrap around the rest.
Yes,
And wear a seatbelt.
I'm just gonna wear bubble wrap everywhere. We are on page 113. This is Parshat Shmini, which is, I think, the third parsha in the book of Leviticus.
Yes,
The big expert on Leviticus is a man called Jacob Milgram from University of California. His daughter is a Reform rabbi. And so Milgram has written several books on Leviticus, and he is the authority. As you know, a lot of Leviticus is devoted is most of it comes from the priestly source P, which was written, as you could imagine, by the priests, and so they're interested in stuff relating to the temple, sacrifices, and other related issues that tend to be rather technical and not of terrible interest to most of us. However, this week we have a story of Nadav and Abihu. So on one hand, yes, it does deal with the ritual. On the other hand, it's a story about these two gentlemen who did something wrong. We're not sure what, and God smites them for whatever they did wrong. And it really alarms me because if I mispronounce a Hebrew word, could God smite me? I would hope not. As long as I'm sincere, surely that's all that counts. But apparently not. In temple ritual, or in this case, tabernacle worship, it's not about being sincere only. It's about doing the ritual correctly. Correct ritual can be efficacious. Incorrect ritual can be catastrophic. So it's a completely different concept than what we have in modern America. We don't really do any ritual in our temple. Everything is a ceremony. A ceremony, the purpose of a ceremony is to be meaningful to the people there. If I look out and everyone looks blank, I know I'm doing something wrong. I have to use less Hebrew. I have to get off the bima and clap my hands. I have to explain it more. So ceremony must be meaningful for the people, observing it or participating in it. Ritual, no. Ritual is something that is done in a particular manner that is determined and dictated by God. It's kind of like with recipes in the kitchen, right? So you have these recipes. I left behind all my cooking books several moves ago because I realized, you just go on the internet and you can download, whatever you want. And sometimes you can follow exactly. So it says, 6 ounces of this and 12 ounces of this and 4 pinches of this. And then there's times you take a look at the recipe and you say, let me improvise. I'm just going to do what I want around what they say, and we'll see how it comes out. And sometimes it comes out great, and sometimes it comes out pretty lousy. And then you say, I should have followed the recipe. And then if it comes out great, you have a problem because you don't really know what you did. You
Right.
just kind of put it together. You can't replicate it.
Oh.
Anyway, if you would do that sort of thing in the tabernacle, you might get killed. So that's the short end of the story. So that's just a few opening words. If there's anyone would like to start with a few comments, short and pointed, Marcia, Richard, and Evelyn.
Okay, it seems to me that what reading through this is that it wasn't so much what they did, but the intent and the reasoning for them doing it. The same thing. They did it because they were trying to preempt Moses, if you will, is what I gathered out of the reading.
Uh-huh.
As opposed to the fact that doing the fire offering in whatever way to in the sanctuary. Is that not so?
We could argue that. You could argue that very well. We'll see as we read today whether that's actually true, but it may very well be, Marcia. Richard.
Well, we have to look at this like the Constitution original intent. And when I look at this, I say, well, this was espoused over 3,000 years ago. And the powers to be, in this case, maybe the priests were saying, if you don't follow the rules, bad things are going to happen to you. And they didn't follow the rules appropriately. They didn't follow Moses' orders. And so they were eliminated. God eliminated them, if you want to say that. No, I agree with Marcia. Follow the rules or else.
I mean, this is a
Well, I
good
didn't say
lesson.
that. I said it was their intent.
Yeah, they may have had intent, but they didn't follow the rules. So they went.
No, but Richard, Marcia didn't say that. She doesn't think it has anything to do with rules. She thinks it has to do with intent. That
Well, the
they
intent
were
of the rules. I think what I interpreted Marcia saying, and maybe I'm wrong, that the intent was to flout the rules. And the rules and regulations are such that if you don't follow
Okay,
the rules,
so
you get
so
punished.
it wasn't what they did, but it was their, but that, you're saying the
Right.
plowed part.
Yeah, but they didn't
So
follow.
it's a covenant.
Done. The intent was to follow rules. They didn't do it.
Okay.
Okay, I think you're saying quite different things,
I think so too, but I don't want
I
to argue.
agree.
but we'll
Okay.
see. And now, Evelyn, you can break the tie here.
No, I just have a completely different concept of what God is and his intent. This particular God seems to be one that says, do it my way or the highway, which means I'll eliminate you. And this concept of God being demanding total obedience to his edicts is a particularly harsh one at this point. I'm thinking of Sodom and Gomorrah and this instance and many others that are listed in the Bible that where he becomes displeased and in a fit of anger wipes out, just as he did with humankind in Noah's before Noah's Ark. He was disgusted with what happened to humankind, and he says, "Okay, we'll wipe them out and start all over. We'll take a few good men and start over." And looking at it from a modern standpoint, is this the kind of God that we want to worship? There is something of the old, what should I say, the pagan worship being very fearful of a God that will wreak vengeance on the people if they disobey. And this for me is very difficult to accept. Yeah, that the two sons were disobedient, ambitious, or whatever it was, wanted to take over. These are all strong possibilities, but why would God just simply destroy them rather than take a more psychological modern approach and say, "Hey guys, this is not what I want you to do. This is what I would prefer that you do. Why don't you take this path instead of the one that you're doing?" And so I'm looking at it from a Freudian standpoint as opposed to a purely religious one. But this particular God, I do not find that I appreciate at all. And I find that the fact that he could so willfully wipe out human beings for disobeying him, to me, seems unduly harsh. That's how I feel about it.
Minya.
I agree with Evelyn completely, because in the very first paragraph, the fire they offered had not been authorized by God. Now, if you're bringing fire to a platform or something in the sanctuary, why does it have to be so exact that, what was it? The fire had certain fumes that were not the same as the ones that God had asked for, but to put them to death because they used the wrong fire, that makes me wonder again, like Evelyn said, was this a right kind of punishment for what they did? Or is there more to it that we don't know?
Now, the whole story is actually very short. If you have your Tanakhs, you look in the book of Leviticus, chapter 10. I'll just read you, it's just a handful of psukim. Now, Aaron's sons, Nadav and Abihu, each took his fire pan, put fire in it, and laid incense on it. And they offered before the Lord alien fire, which he had not enjoined upon them. That's one sentence. Sentence 2. And fire came forth from the Lord and consumed them. Thus they died at the instance of the Lord. Sentence 2. Sentence 3. Then Moses said to Aaron, "This is what the Lord meant when he said, 'Through those near to me I show myself holy and gain glory before all the people.' And Aaron was silent." 3 sentences.
Wait.
And Aaron's 2 sons are just gone, Marion and then Marcia.
You have to unmute.
Mute. You have to unmute, Marion. There you
I
go.
believe that at the time that this was written was before we had completely accepted monotheism. And probably. And I think that if I remember, that the God we finally chose and chose us was one of the war gods at the time. I think that our perception of God is different now than it was at that time. But at that time, their perception of God was a whole different view.
Mhm.
And then
Uh,
that's
Would-
why
Could you
Yeah.
explain what a war god is? I don't know what that is.
there were lots of different kinds of gods back in the pagan. There were
Right.
gods of war and gods of peace and gods of rain and sun, but war gods were gods who were strong and mighty and easily riled and fought for what they wanted.
Rabbi,
Thank you.
yes, Marcia.
my Tanakh says, though through those near to me, I show myself holy and assert my authority before all the people. Yours doesn't say assert my authority. It says something else.
Yeah, mine
You have
doesn't
the
either.
first, you have the JPS,
I have what?
you have the JPS translation version 1.
I'm looking. Hold on.
What page is it in JPS?
Jewish Public,
No,
Public
what page is it?
Society.
167.
Okay.
The
Let's
copy,
see,
this was of
there's
1962.
two Jewish Publication Society translations. One was done in 1917 and one was done in the 1980s.
Oh, this is the older one. This is
And I
19,
have the newer one.
And
Yeah,
so
so
do
do
I.
I.
but I think that
That's
word,
the newer one, Minya.
Right.
yeah, so what is the word that you have in yours now?
Minya should have the same word. And fire came forth from the Lord and consumed them. Thus they died at the instance of the Lord. Then Moses said to Aaron, "This is what the Lord meant when he said, 'Through those near to me I show myself holy, and gain glory before all the people.'"
And gain
And
glory,
Aaron-
and mine says assert my authority, okay. And that I think is the biggie in there.
Yeah,
My translation fits better to what the action was. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
see a glory being something that you would think of when you're killing somebody.
Right.
When they do a third translation, actually they're coming out with one now that's gender sensitive or gender neutral, but that's not going to be
For the Torah?
Yeah,
Oh, I hate that.
it's coming out like now.
So,
I think it's just been released.
Hmm.
All right, listen. We live in funny times.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's turn to the commentary. Shirley, can you push your your camera back? We're seeing, I think, your
I
ear.
think she's
There
on.
you go.
There we go.
that's the only way I can hear. If I put it up.
Ah,
Oh,
okay,
okay.
we understand. now.
Your volume
not-
is not very high.
Not connected into my phone yet.
Okay,
You're gonna need to get all these fancy, newfangled technological things. I have an external speaker, and that makes it much louder. Okay, so page 113, who would like to start reading?
you want me to? I'll read.
Evelyn?
Evelyn's reading.
Yeah, Evelyn, I do have to tell you, there's no pay for this. It's strictly voluntary.
Yeah, just ask me about that.
When I read for the blind, I also don't get paid. That's okay.
Okay, as long as we're clear.
Yep. What did Nadab and Abihu do wrong? According to the Torah, Nadab and Abihu, sons of Aaron, each took a fire pan, placed incense upon it, and brought it to the sanctuary altar for an offering. The fire they offered had not been authorized by God, nor had they been commanded to bring it to the sanctuary. As a result, they were both put to death. What did
Okay, I'm not sure I understand. So they take fire pans, which is for sacrifice or for some sort of ritual. They put incense on it and they bring it to the sanctuary and they offer it to God. So they make a little fire and they put the pan there with the incense in it. What's wrong with that? I mean, they're just trying to be nice to God and to right? So
Incense has
what?
different fragrances.
What, does God want incense or does he want an actual sacrifice?
Well, there was such a thing as offering incense, so it was done. It was done at certain points. Yes.
You have to hear
Yes,
the.
Steve. Steve.
So the question is, what was God authorizing to be
Right.
sacrificed?
What
We
was
don't know
kosher?
that. We have to just read into it.
I think
But
this
if
is,
I want to pray, I can pray, right? I don't have to wait for God to authorize me to
No,
pray.
right. But in this instance, back in that period in time, that's what they had to follow. And if they didn't follow it and exactly as to God authorized, then therefore he punished them.
It seems strict, Steve. It seems really strict.
Well, but those days, the times were strict.
Yeah, well, they obviously, Nadav and Abihu weren't aware of this, obviously. I mean, how about giving them a warning? Marion and then Marcia.
No, Marcia first. She was had her
Marcia
hand up first.
first.
no, I was gonna
Okay.
say, this is a Steve Harvey thing. We have to see the rest of the story.
Okay.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
Marion?
I was gonna say that and God being a much more, I lost the word, but anyway, he will show how strong he is, but to and how much power he has rather than the creative side. But God, it is trying to demonstrate to the people that if they don't do the right thing, there will be bad consequences. It can be argued that he went a little far, but he was, I think, in this trying to demonstrate you better toe the line or things might get hot for you too.
Wow. Wow. I'm Richard already is in a very hot environment.
Lava fields and
So-
like,
Okay, the rules
So
are written
he's,
3,000
he,
years
I,
ago.
but
Where is
remember,
he?
Richard, no illicit sacrifices or you'll be in bigger trouble than you already
You
appear
bet.
to be.
You bet.
Okay, Evelyn, back to you.
Okay, what did they do to deserve such severe punishment? Were they put to death for offering the wrong kind of fire on the sanctuary altar? The story of Nadab and Abihu raises issues which interpreters have struggled for many centuries. Early rabbinical commentators, for example, claimed that the two brothers were not punished for offering the wrong kinds of incense or fire. They were condemned for the evil intent that motivated them. Nadab and Abihu, say the rabbis, were ruthlessly ambitious. Supporting their interpretation, the rabbis creatively invent an imaginary conversation between Nadab and Abihu as they stand with Moses and Aaron at Mount Sinai. Look at those two old men, they say to each other. Soon they will be gone, and we will be the leaders of this community.
All right, stop. Isn't this natural? I mean, that I'm sure there's all the politicians in America looking at the two men that are going to run for president and say, if I can become vice president, these guys aren't going to last long. I mean, our current vice president, I mean, could you blame her if she wakes up every morning and checks her phone to see if her boss has had a heart attack overnight? I mean, it's natural. If you're young or youngish, you want. I mean, the most person I felt the sorriest for was Prince Charles, right? He spent his entire life waiting for his mother to retire. She would not retire.
Right.
She waited, she was like, 99 and she died, and she still
93.
wouldn't give up her job. Normal people retire at 65 or 70. Give her son a chance. And then he becomes king finally at age 75, and he almost immediately gets cancer. I mean, if he'd become king at 45, he would have had 30 good years with perfect health. But now, he's already older, and I just feel bad for him. Comments?
About King Charles. Well,
Or just about anybody. In other words, the point
Succession.
here that Nadav and Abihu are thinking Moses and Aaron are old and they're going to die and we're going to take over. Is that such a bad thing to think?
No.
Succession planning?
Yeah. I mean, they could have made it a little bit nicer and say, soon they're going to move to Sun City and have an active retirement, and then we can take over, instead of saying they're going to be gone. But, they're not saying we're going to murder them.
No.
Richard.
Real quickly is, number one, we're talking about a tough God from 3,000 years ago who, as everyone has said here, has to compete with the other gods to show that there's one God and that's He. So that's probably what's all about. And God's pretty tough. You consider, what He's done over the millennia, from kicking Adam and Eve out of sanctuary, destroying all the world except for Noah and his family and the animals. And then, as we say, Sodom and Gomorrah, and turning, I can't remember, who did he turn? Sarah, who did he turn to salt?
Lot's wife.
Wife.
Well, Lot's wife, right. Turned to salt, okay. She didn't do anything bad, but she looked back. And then, of course, what he did to the Egyptians to get the Jews free. And now this. So it's a
Yeah.
tough God.
So if you're dealing directly with God, you have to be careful. Evelyn.
I was just thinking that in order to make a cohesive group that will follow instructions, I think initially one probably has to be rather harsh in dealing with human beings. I'm thinking of military training, where these kids come in, they're a diverse group, some are inclined to follow instructions and some don't. And so in order to whip them into shape, as it were, and be obedient, follow orders, there is harsh punishment for those who do not. And perhaps the concept of being able to make this group of Hebrews obedient, who follow the laws that God has dictated, the only way to do it is to mete out harsh punishment initially to make them comply. I think in terms of human nature and the way we train youngsters or don't train youngsters today, the way to get kids to obey is to make sure that they obey. Someone that I met yesterday was saying that she was not Jewish and she attended her stepdaughter's son's bar mitzvah, I think it was. And she said she could not believe the noise, the joking, the carrying on of the kids in the synagogue. They were disobedient, they were rude, they were talking throughout the entire service. And she said, where were the parents? Why didn't the parents make them sit there quietly? And someone else said, well, these kids are so used to going to bar mitzvahs, to them it's just one big party at this point. There is a certain lack of discipline on the part of the parents to insist that these children sit quietly during a religious service and not have them running up and down the aisles or carrying on. And yes, this is human nature as such. And people will do this, whether they're young or old. They will not conform unless the punishment is severe enough to make them conform. So, okay, from that standpoint, was God being too harsh?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we could also,
Marion.
there are two ways to have people, to encourage people to conform. One is the harsh way, and the other one is the carrot. I mean, do this, and you will get this. Or in the case of the kids in the sanctuary, if you don't the harsher one would be if you don't behave in the sanctuary, you don't go to the party. I mean, there are ways and ways to do it. Death is kind of final, sort of. It's
Very
kind of
final.
It is.
Okay, Evelyn, back to you.
Okay. According to the bottom of the page on the left column of 113, according to the rabbis, God warns Nadab and Abihu about the consequences of such ambitions by asking them, who will bury whom? Will it be you who will outlive them, or will they outlive you? The two young men are stunned. After a moment of silence, God tells them, your fathers will bury you and go on to lead my people. From the point of view of the early rabbis, Nadab and Abihu were punished because they plotted to remove Moses and Aaron from their positions of leadership. They appeared at the sanctuary with their own offerings, hoping that the people would be impressed and bring pressure upon Moses and Aaron to transfer their authority to them. Envy and impatience fueled their scheme, said the rabbis, and in the end, they were punished because of their lust for position and power. By contrast, Rabbi Levy argues that it was not ambition but arrogance that motivated Nadab and Abihu. Again, employing creative imagination, he claims that the two set themselves off from all their peers and bragged that no woman was good enough for them to marry. In fact, says Rabbi Levy, they insensitively took advantage of women's feelings, raising their expectations and hopes for a serious relationship when they had no intention of marriage.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
I
Okay,
don't
one
know
more
where
paragraph.
where's that in Leviticus 46 and a half?
All right, one more paragraph, Evelyn, then we'll discuss.
Okay. Rabbi Levy claims that they publicly declared, our father's brother is king, our mother's brother is a prince, our father is high priest, and we are both deputy high priests. What woman is good enough for us? Because they arrogantly demeaned others, they were punished.
Wow, okay, Marcia.
Well, I read the next part of the Torah reading and as it goes on, and Moses tells Aaron and his own sons not to bereave what's the faces
Not to
Nadah
mourn
and
for them.
Abihu, not to mourn them, basically. So their death was considered justified, I guess, in Moses' eyes, and so not to be mourned, so there must have been something to that's what this rabbi's invention that we just read. You know what I'm saying? The fact that they were it says here, do not dishevel your hair or rend your clothes lest you die in anger, strike the whole community. But your kinsmen, all the house of Israel, shall beware the burning that the Lord has wrought. So it's meant to be an example. That's the whole thing was an example unto the people of Israel, I think is what I'm reading. And so what Marion was saying and what who was it that was it Evelyn, that
Evelyn.
this has to be a strong arm, I guess, at this point in the history.
So it's an example, but you didn't say what it's an example of. Is it the ambition? Is it the arrogance? I mean, we'll come back to that.
I think it's the standing up against Moses and Aaron.
So the ambition. Okay. Richard?
Again, they're not following authority. And that's what the priests are saying. We got to look into this from original intent, as a conservative say in the Supreme Court. from 3,000 years ago. Moses, is leading the people. He's trying to make them cohesive. He's the boss. And these two younger individuals went and did stuff that wasn't supposed to be done in the temple. And so they paid the ultimate price for it.
Hmm.
You're not following authority. I think that's what it's basically saying. They can invent all sorts of things about the women, and that's not in there. What I read, as soon as I saw it, I said the intent is you follow authority or else. And
Well,
authority
Rabbi Levi
Moses.
is saying something completely different. He's saying these guys were like the princely sons of almost royalty, and they were going around telling women, we're great, and leading them on and saying, we're going to marry you, and then not marrying them. I mean, it seems like completely, not connected to the story, right? I mean, he's just trying to say, be sincere in relationships, which is a nice thing, but I don't see the connection to this story.
Well, is this Rabbi Levi? What era was he talking?
I'm not sure, but somewhere between the second and the fifth.
Excuse me.
Marcia.
I think he was just trying to get sympathy to God's actions to make it, make them into really bad guys, so that when they got killed off, it wasn't such a loss.
Okay, so you want to just throw all the mud you can at them. So, all right, Steve, Evelyn, Marion.
I don't have.
No,
Okay, Evelyn, you want to keep reading?
okay. She agrees but cites other evidence, basing his interpretation of the behavior of Nadab and Abihu upon a discussion of it in the Talmud. Rashi points out, rather than following the carefully detailed directions for offering a sacrifice or bringing fire to the sanctuary, they took upon themselves the power of deciding what to offer, how to bring the offering, and when. For disregarding the process and failing to consult with Aaron and Moses about what they planned to do, Nadab and Abihu were punished. Rashi argues that their arrogance led them to believe that they were accountable to no one.
And then we have a quote in the box from Leviticus Rabbah. Leviticus Rabbah is the midrash, the main midrash on Leviticus.
Okay. They failed to consult. Not only did Nadab and Abihu fail to consult Moses and Aaron about their plan to bring a foreign fire into the sanctuary, they also failed to communicate with each other. Instead of discussing the matter in a way that might have led them to speak with the fathers or others in authority, they acted quickly without carefully subjecting their ideas to criticism. For not consulting, they suffered serious consequences. I think the typical of youth to act before thinking. And so I think humans have to be trained, literally trained, to think before acting. And youth is very impetuous. I want to act before that. And so one doesn't know how old these two men were. Were they teenagers? Were they young men in their 20s, or were they older? If they were older, I would say they were ambitious and arrogant. If they were younger, I would attribute it to what shall we say, in teenage impulse as such. So there's so much in the story that so many facts that we don't know, that on the basis of what information we have been given, we can come to any number of conclusions as
Now,
to.
if they were in the 14 to 21 age group, you could imagine that they might have just, as you said, Evelyn, just gotten, they're just not in control of their behavior, and they tend to be impetuous and rash and engage in risky behavior. I mean, I had an acquaintance in high school who the year after high school, a year after I left, he smashed up a car and killed himself, driving, recklessly. And this happens all the time with driving, especially. They just don't realize you don't do these things. It's dangerous. They don't have this, I don't know, this sense of perspective.
All,
Marion.
all teenagers believe they're immortal, and
Right,
it's not going to happen to me. It's something that happens to other people.
right.
So it's not until they realize that things can backfire, that you can end up in more doo-doo than you plan to be. Do young men and young women mature?
Right, and then I had this the case, that young woman that she took drugs and she just left her family home and wandered into the desert, and they can never find her, and they think she just died in the desert. Completely. Who walks out in the 10 miles into the desert in the middle of the night with nobody around? But that she doesn't think. She just wants to do it, and she'd been rescued before by her parents, and she figured they'll find me. But, so it seems almost sad that, but how do you control? Let's say these guys were 19. What do you can't chain them to their rooms, and if you did, you wouldn't, they give them a chance to to learn maturity, right? Marcia.
So what is the point of this story being in the Torah? I mean, we don't know a lot of the ifs and stuff around the story because it's kind of vague, really, and all this stuff is conjecture that we're reading in Harvey Fields. And so, is it the point that we're saying that absolute God has absolute control over rituals, or through Moses, or what? Why is the story there?
Well, that's a very, very good question. And that's, I don't have the book here, but I'm reading a book by Jacob Wright,
Why is it?
Wright, which is really a very hard book. It was given to me by one of our students, but it's very good. And he asked, the book is called How Was the Bible Written? Or Why Was the
Why?
Bible Written? Sorry. Why was the Bible written? Not how or when, but why? And so you're asking that same question. Why was this story included? The answer is we don't know. I mean, we just inherited the Bible as it is. And so,
Yes,
but there was,
but we
there was one more comment
Yeah.
there, but there were these texts, and the redactors of the Bible, they basically had a choice: do I put it in or do I cut it out? If I cut it out, it's lost to posterity, so you don't want to do that. So in general, the editors try to keep in as much of the material as possible, which is good. So we have most of what was in the Bible originally. There may have been a little bit taken out here and there, but they fortunately seem to have been very conservative in their choices. So they said it's a story, we've got it, we're going to keep it, and then we'll make sense of it later. Now what the sense is, that's what we're discussing here. But even if the redactors felt, well, we could live without this story, you don't really want to throw out stuff.
Was it put in to be interpreted?
Well,
That could be a
no, I
reason.
mean, I can read you from Milgram. He
Okay.
says no. He says, what lies behind the Nadav and Abihu incident? The Nadav and Abihu incident must be understood exactly as it reads. Its background is not political, but religious. So Milgram rejects all these interpretations about politics. And he says this is strictly about not following the ritual. It is based not on some similar single event, but on an ongoing rite. To be sure, the story's motivation is to protect the vested interests of its priestly authors and Trojans. All right, so there's your answer. The priests wanted the story in order to protect their prerogatives. Only the Kohanim should do stuff, and if somebody else does it, or even a young Kohen, they have to consult with the old Kohanim. They saw only too well that offering incense was an easily accomplished ritual, requiring no sanctuary, no elaborate apparatus, and above all, no priests. So they're against offering incense because they said it'll make the job of a priest superfluous. Look at me. I was an unemployed priest. And if it wasn't for finding a job as a rabbi, I would be unemployed to this day. But we would sell the priests short by attributing to them this one selfish motive. They also saw that offering incense was a widespread idolatrous practice. Well, who said that here? Marian. And that in times of despair, Israel, especially its women, I'm just reading, might be seduced by other gods. If my understanding of the Nadav and Abihu incident is correct, then the priests are to be added to the historic company of Israel's other spiritual leaders, the Deuteronomy authors, civil authorities, prophets, and rabbis who disapproved of and remonstrated against private incense offerings. The story of Nadav and Abihu is the priestly counterpart to the episode of the golden calf. Just as the latter followed upon the theophany of God at Sinai, so the former took place in the aftermath of the divine theophany at the tabernacle. Clearly, Nadav and Abihu's heresy was deliberately equated in the mind of the priestly writer with the heresy of Israel at Mount Sinai with the golden calf. He's good, but he's complicated, but he's good. But he's saying the Kohanim wanted to stop all incense offerings. You know how we usually talk about sacrifices being animals, right? And we don't really like that. But how did that come about? Well, the priests knew that was so complicated that experts would be required. Also, there would be a lot of meat to be distributed so they could get more money, basically, or get payment. If you're just burning incense, what are you going to do? Give the priest a little bit of the incense? It's useless. Okay.
So,
Marcia.
okay, so now I'm just being the devil's advocate here. These are Aaron's sons. Is this reflect again back to Aaron? He's already gotten in trouble with the golden calf stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
It's
amazing Aaron is still around.
Yeah.
He and his relatives cause a lot of trouble, and yet nothing ever happens to him.
I'm surprised that God knocked him off.
I'm sorry?
I'm surprised God didn't knock him off after the golden calf incident.
Totally. He should have been executed by God after the golden calf. There's no question in my mind. What, Marion?
Moses is the one that was punished for the golden calf episode. He did not get to go into the promised land. So
was that not from the rock and the water?
That was because
that was before.
The water.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
You don't mess with us. We've been through this a few times.
Okay, yeah, you're right. But
yeah,
I had something and it died.
Senior moment.
Yeah, we have them all.
But yeah, no, it was Aaron who was responsible for the golden calf. The people said to him, help us to burn down the gold and make a golden calf. And what did Aaron should have said?
No,
No,
In fact,
absolutely.
some other guy said no. And what did they do?
they,
The
Killed him.
people? Yeah, they killed him.
they
So then they
killed him.
said to Aaron, help us. And he should have said no, even though they would have killed him too. But he didn't. He said, okay. He said, maybe it's not a great idea. Moses may be angry when he comes back, but I'll help you because I don't want to get anything happen to me. So that's not the attitude that God usually likes. But with Aaron, he tolerated it. Steve and then Marion.
Okay, well, Aaron was also the spokesperson for Moses. So Moses needed Aaron
Mm,
in that aspect.
Mhm.
Otherwise, Moses couldn't communicate with the Israelites.
uh-huh. Which shows you if you're needed enough, you can get away with almost anything.
Pretty close.
Marion.
At this point in time, did Moses already do the rock in the water at this point?
I don't think so.
Think so
I
either.
think that comes later.
Because what I was thinking is that God may have known that he was going to need a leader to take them into the land of Israel. And he may have been partial to Aaron or forgiving of Aaron because he had already decided that that's the way it's going to go.
But Aaron doesn't go into
No,
Israel
he didn't.
either.
He dies earlier.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
died.
he dies before Moses. But it's Joshua that takes the Israelites in.
Right, right.
But if it
Okay.
hadn't been Joshua, they could have picked somebody else. There were presumably thousands of people there, depending on how you read the story. Minya?
You have to
Um,
mute. There you go.
I'm just trying to think about this in terms of if God wants things done a certain way, then there's no room for people being creative, if that's not the
Mhm.
right word here,
right.
or being able to think a certain way.
Free
Right.
will.
Think of the Orthodox, the real Orthodox, the Hasidim
Right,
with the hats and everything. They don't think, Ben.
right.
They know that these are the rituals, these are the laws, this is what we have to do. So when does that part come to be about being able to think and say, I have another idea. Maybe this can be done this way, or this can be done that way. It could
mean,
never change. You said no,
that's
so it can't.
a really, really excellent critique. And if you look carefully, the text said two different things. At one point, it said, and this is the part that I emphasized in my introduction, God tells you what to do and you do it.
Right.
In another place, they said that Nadav and Abihu's sin was not consulting with Aaron and Moses about what they plan to do. So in that, it's more flexible. They're saying new ideas are welcome, but you can't just implement them on your own.
Run them up the chain.
Right. So it's like I go away for a couple weeks and Marion's leading the services and she said, oh, won't it be neat to do X, Y, and Z? But she doesn't talk to me about the idea. She just does it. So her sin is not that she wants to be creative, but in not consulting and getting the buy-in from other people, but just going ahead with it on her own. So you could see it that way. That would be more a reform approach. A real Orthodox approach would be what we said before, that no, you have to do it God's way and only God's way.
My sister-in-law
Marsha,
said that. If
I'm
she's not,
sorry.
I'm sorry to just interject. My sister-in-law's that way. She believes that everything has to be done as it was written. And if you don't do it that way, then you'll be punished.
That's difficult.
How is she like that? I mean,
Well, she's Orthodox. But
so
I'm
how
saying
does it?
she really believes that. She believes that you have to do everything exactly the way it's written. And if you don't, you go to the rabbi and he's supposed to excuse you for whatever mistake you made. But she believes that she has to do, like I said, whatever's written down, or else she's afraid that she'll be punished in the end.
So if she wants to pray at home instead of going to synagogue on
She has to have a
Shabbat,
pretty good excuse. She has to have an
okay.
excuse like being sick or something, otherwise she has to go.
And if she doesn't have, if she doesn't understand some Hebrew, can she read it in English?
Stands the Hebrew.
I don't know. I don't know whether she would have to go to have somebody explain it to her, but she can read the Hebrew.
All right. So do you think that she's losing out on something by her approach?
Well, I live a totally different life. The way things are done when you're reform, as you know, is different from the way they do things. I would like to believe that we have, I guess I should say, that I have some independence in my thoughts so that I can think maybe a little bit off the grid and that I don't have to follow it exactly as it's written.
Mhm.
I guess
Marcia,
So
terrible.
we're just talking about free will,
Mhm, mhm.
basically. I think when it comes down to it, if, we want to take the Haggadah, let's say, as Passover is coming up, and do a different reading and do interpretation as, not take it. Is there a Haggadah that's like an Orthodox Haggadah?
yeah,
Sure,
All the
yeah.
other Haggadahs are, off the wall then to the Orthodox, right?
yes, yes.
So that in itself is free will as in in light of of a religion is taking that Haggadah and doing it differently.
The Haggadah is a wonderful example because, it was assembled over many hundreds of years. But then at some point, the Orthodox said, this is the Haggadah. But even the Orthodox are aware that it was put together. It's a mishmash of all sorts of different things. So if you speak to the most Orthodox rabbi, he's still going to say, yes, it was put, some of it is from there and some of it's from here and some of it's from there. And I don't see why, since discussion is allowed, I can't see why additional readings would be prohibited. You just have to read the full Haggadah that's there. But if you
can
wanted
add
to
on, but
add,
you get on, but you can't take away.
I would think, but they might not encourage the adding on because it, kind of gives the impression that you're adding things that, aren't officially sanctioned. I'm not really sure, but yeah, it's a good example. Steve.
Okay, we're gonna be using the 30-minute Haggadah, I understand, for Passover
Yeah,
Seder.
yeah, we're
That's
changing our
not
guts.
considered, I guess God would not say that is the quote, the
Correct.
Haggadah we should use, because it's not what he would prefer.
Right. God did send me an email a few weeks
I'm sure
ago
he did.
and said that he said that this is really, he said you reform are really going too far. He said, I want the 120-minute Haggadah
Mhm.
and you're using a 30-minute. But he said that, maybe we could compromise and do a 75-minute Haggadah. I said, God, if it was up to me, I would do exactly what you want. But I have religious practices committee. You're going to have to talk to them. And he said, too much bureaucracy. Just do your best. I don't expect too much from you Americans anyway. Rich.
We could get one of the yeshiva students, Orthodox, and he can read it so fast that it'll be done in 15
Mm.
minutes.
Well, I went to the Chabad of the West Valley, Rabbi Lou. I went to his Purim party 2 years in a row. He had it in Desert Ridge, And
Cinnamon 101.
and they have a yeshiva student reading the Haggadah in Hebrew at full speed. And
Wow.
you know, last year I tried to follow, and it was just impossible. This year I didn't even bother. I just, you know, they have food, so I just ate. I wandered around. They had some reptiles to look at. I just basically ignored the Megillah reading because it was just too fast.
How long did it take him to finish it?
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
How
4
long is-
Maybe,
hours.
maybe 16, 18 minutes.
Oh,
Wow.
Oh, we should hire one out for ours. And
Why,
God will be
Rich?
pleased.
I could do it. I could do it.
That fast?
You have
Well,
to do it fast. Like my father used to daven. My God, he could daven really quick.
all right. I don't know how fast, but I could try. I mean, I'm so trained to make sure everyone understands things that, you know, I'll stop and explain and I'll ask Evelyn to comment. And what's supposed to be 16 minutes will end up being 60 minutes or more. Okay.
I have one question.
Evelyn.
When the student read through the Megillah at warp speed, as they say, doesn't that in a way subvert the original intent for you to listen to it and appreciate the words? He's just mumbling words as rapidly as he can. He's going through the form, but
Right.
the intent is not there. And I find that equally as disturbing. It would be better if he read maybe one or two of the books of the Megillah well, and rather than
Right.
really flip through.
Well,
it,
you know,
it-
that's my perspective as a Reform rabbi. I feel that I want to read as much as possible so people can understand and appreciate it. If they're just sitting there looking like dazed, it's counterproductive. It's sacrilegious. But the Orthodox don't agree. So, you know, that's why I'm not an Orthodox rabbi. Okay, Evelyn, bottom of page 114 on the left, Rashbam.
Rashbam, Rashi's grandson, based his view of what Nadab and Abihu did wrong upon the Torah text. He points out that the Torah states each took his fire pan, put fire in it, and they offered before God alien fire, which God had not commanded them. Their sin, Rashbaum explains, is that they offered a kind of fire that had not been commanded. That is why the Torah calls it Esh Zarah, or alien or foreign fire. In other words, Nadab and Abihu took the law into their own hands.
This is what I was saying earlier with the making your own recipes.
Mhm.
The recipe here comes from God. You can't make your own recipe.
Good thing it wasn't me.
Okay. Rashbaum also speculates on why they did so. He explains that Nadab and Abihu were deeply impressed when God appeared in the midst of the fire on the altar after Moses and Aaron offered their sacrifices. Afterwards, he concludes, they assumed that if they offered fire, God would once again appear and they would be given credit by the people for their special powers, powers equal to those of even Moses and Aaron. They therefore were willing to take the law into their own hands to improve their reputations and their chances for deposing Moses and Aaron. Rabbi Morris Adler believes that the story of Nadab and Abihu is filled with symbolisms. The fire that they brought, says Adler, burned within them. It was the fire of ambition, and their death was the kind of death people bring upon themselves. Adler writes, it was a fire of willfulness and hostility. It was a fire of impulse and desire. As they ministered at the altar, they were the victims of their own appetites and greeds, whims and ambitions. No fire came from on high to consume them. They were consumed by their own fierce and false ambitions. In the box on ambition. Ambition is bondage. Look for cake and you lose your bread. Ambition destroys its possessor. Do not seek greatness for yourself. Do not crave a seat at royal tables. The requirement for success. This is the indispensable requirement for success. You have to want it and want it badly. You have to have a will to accomplish whatever it is you're setting out to accomplish, says Rita Hauser, who had to overcome formidable barriers of sex discrimination to become one of the leading female attorneys of her generation. I believe in will. I think the will to succeed, the will to win, the will to overcome adversity is an absolute major force in the success of anybody. I would like to make a comment on the box on ambition. Ambition destroys its possessor. The Jews are always told, keep your head low, don't stick your head up because you'll be singled out. And yet when we think of all of the Nobel Prize winners, all of those great inventors, all of those Jews who have contributed mightily to society as a whole, not just to Jewish society, they had ambition, they had the will to succeed and a will to achieve. And so I think this goes contrary to what most human beings actually feel. It seems as if they're suggesting keep yourself down, don't make a nuisance of yourself, just live quietly. And frankly, I think that's a wrong philosophy.
Okay. And I said that at the beginning of the talk today, right? Something similar. Marion and then Minya.
I was just going to say that a lot of the people who received Nobel Prizes you've never heard of before, because they didn't stick out. They put their nose to the grindstone or whatever, to the lab or wherever, and they worked their little tushies off. But they didn't go out in public and say, hey, look at me, I'm the best. Vote for me, and I think that may be the kind of boasting that God's not in favor of. I think that it's not a matter of not having ambition as such. It's a matter of advertising it.
Self-aggrandizement.
Self-aggrandizement, exactly.
Well,
I think that a lot of us have ambition, but we stay in our groove and we do what we need to do to reach our goal.
I guess it also depends what area you're in. You know, scientists just have to do science maybe, but if you're like a public personality, it's not that you're doing anything unique. You just have to, get a public profile. That's your job, is to build your public profile. All right, Evelyn.
Continue reading.
No, I thought you had a comment.
No, everything has been pretty well.
Okay. Steve, Shirley, Rich, Minya. Okay, then back to you, Evelyn.
Okay. In his reflections on Nadab and Abihu, Naphtali Hertz Wesley is much less critical than other commentators. Wesley calls Nadab and Abihu religious personalities of the highest order who did not act out of selfish ambition or any other mean purpose. Quite the opposite, says Wesley. The two sons of Aaron were deeply moved by the beauty and meaning of the ritual sacrifices offered by Moses and Aaron. In their enthusiasm and joy, they lost their heads and entered the Holy of Holies to burn incense, something that they had not been commanded to do by Moses. Their wrongdoing, Wesley argues, was not the deliberate breaking of the law, but rather their failure to control their religious enthusiasms. They should not have gone beyond what Moses had commanded. They should have been more humble instead of blindly assuming that whatever they did in the sanctuary would be acceptable. They were punished, said Wesley, because they occupied positions of importance which they misused in their misguided excitement and zeal.
Ah, okay, stop there. So what do you think of this Wesley guy?
Well,
Is he very orthodox or not very orthodox, or is he enlightened or fundamentalist? I mean, what do you think of him?
well, it's my attitude towards like teenagers acting out of impulse rather than consulting in a more mature fashion with their elders or those who were in charge. And so they took it upon themselves. And so, yeah, I can't say that that's an excuse for their behavior as such.
So,
It's
but
like,
you like his commentary. He fits into a modern thinking then.
yes, very much so. It's
All
like
right.
will be youth.
Richard, you agree with Wesley?
Can't hear you.
Naphtali Hertz Wesley.
I can't really make much of a comment because I wasn't concentrating. I'm busy eating before I go to mom.
Naphtali Hertz Wesley.
I'll fill in.
Okay, Marcia.
I kind of think he was making excuses for them,
Yeah,
Oh,
so
that's what I said. Youth will be youth. Yeah.
yes, that's what he's doing. Yeah, he's just writing it off, saying, "Oh well," But I think when we went back to what Marion was saying way at the beginning, I think they were trying. God at that point was trying to establish a sense of rule in the area that God is there. You do it my way, please, or else, And I think that's why the story.
okay. The reason I was asking was because Naphtali Hertz Wesley was an Jewish Enlightenment figure. And then the next rabbi, Samson Raphael Hirsch, is from the same era roughly. Both are German, and Hertz is more from the Orthodox end. So Wesley and Hirsch represent two different philosophies, in German Judaism in the 19th century, 18th, 19th century. Okay. Evelyn, you want to do Hirsch?
Yeah. Rabbi Samson R. Hirsch criticizes Nadab and Abihu for similar reasons. He explains that Judaism is a tradition of laws and commandments given to bond the community together as a sacred people. When individuals act out of their own zeal to change or break the law, they end up disrupting community expectations and unity. Nadab and Abihu may have been dedicated priests, as Wesley argues, but they endangered community discipline and trust with their new and alien fire. Hirsch goes on to identify the actions of Nadab and Abihu with modern reform and conservative rabbis who make changes in Jewish tradition. He comments, we can understand that the death of the priestly youths is the most solemn warning for all future priests or rabbis against every expression of caprice and every subjective idea of what is right and becoming, not by fresh inventions, even of God-serving novices, students, but by carrying out that which is ordained by God, has the Jewish priest or rabbi to establish the authenticity of his activities. Disturbed by the rising tide of reform leaders who called for more flexibility in interpreting the meaning of Torah and Jewish law, and for changes in the law to make it more relevant to modern Jewish experience, Hirsch condemns reformers for bringing alien fire into the sanctuary. He identifies them as the Nadabs and Abihus of his time.
Oh,
What?
no.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
We're in
no.
trouble.
Comments. Don't all look at me. I'm at fault. I accept the blame. Wow. Oh my.
We're in trouble.
I mean, Samson Raphael Hirsch died 100 years ago, but I still feel the sting of his rebuke.
Well, you all better come with me to Hades here.
To where?
To Hades, right here.
Hades, you're saying.
Hades.
Yes, Hades.
Hades.
It looks like a lava field,
Yeah,
Actually, it is. It's a Hawaiian lava field.
what I thought it looked like.
well, that's hell.
All right, so should we go back to doing things the strict way? And because I don't want to get, struck down by God.
You get struck down by your congregation if you drive back.
Yes,
lose
I'm.
your job.
God seems to be approving of our association.
Marion.
I think that in modern times, the kind of punishments, if you will, that are meted out are more like consequences. Like if you don't do what the religious practices committee tells you to do, you may find yourself back in Jamaica. Those kinds of things, consequences, rather than God striking people down. We don't have any evidence that that happens, but it may. You don't know if that person who was hit by a bus did something crappy. I mean, you don't know, but we like to believe that our God is a kind and generous and loving God, not a demanding, wrathful God. So we don't attribute the bad things that happen necessarily to God, such as earthquakes and tsunamis and things like that. It's because of what we've done, not what God has done. Or it's Mother Nature.
Wow. Okay. Comments, Steve, Evelyn,
Wait,
Steve, and then elevator. Steve.
Well, go ahead.
yeah, who's going?
I'll start first. I mean, Marion, you have a valid point. I mean, we don't know what happened to this guy or why he was hit by the bus, other than the fact that he may have maybe looking at his phone as opposed to watching the road or the street. We don't know. I mean, but when circumstances like that happen, we always say, "Oh my God," the tornadoes and the hurricanes and all these natural situations. I mean, we always say, "Oh my God."
There was an earthquake in Japan. Was it?
Yes,
Taiwan?
yes,
Yes.
yes.
Taiwan.
Yeah.
7.4.
That's
Evelyn.
I'm just thinking that in a group such as an Orthodox or a group, even let's say the Mormons, where you have these rules, you are expected to conform. If you do not conform, You don't have to worry about God striking you dead. The group will shun you. They will cast you out as such. You are no longer part of that group. And that in itself is a devastating thing for someone who has been accustomed to the support of that group. So in a way, you could say that when the group does become a cohesive group and obedient to whatever laws that they have consider obeying, that when one does not and is being difficult and refuses to obey, God doesn't have to punish them. The group itself will do the punishing by casting them out. Is this a more contemporary way of saying that God is punishing you, in a sense?
Wow. So if you're going to be a Mormon, you have to follow most of the Mormon rules. You can cheat a
Oh.
little bit quietly, but you can't be flagrant about it, or else people will start to ostracize you and say, so and so is drinking alcohol in the public square. We have to do something.
I'm thinking of the Orthodox. If you don't keep kashrut, and my daughter's conservative, she will not eat at someone's house who also does not keep a kosher home. And this creates a difficulty for me because she knows I do not keep a kosher home. And so I find that they are becoming a little more laid back, a little more lax. They are coming here for Passover. We will have a kosher meal. He'll have it catered. But the point is that they have to face the reality of modern times and bend a little, give a little. They cannot be so strict, otherwise they limit their ability to function in society as such.
Well, and that's partly the reason these religious groups want to limit their integration into society so that they don't assimilate. So it keeps you separate. Okay, so I'll read the final paragraph there.
Okay.
Most Reform and conservative Jewish leaders would defend themselves by pointing out that Jewish law has never been static, inflexible, or resistant to change. In every generation, Jews have sought to shape the laws of Torah to meet contemporary needs. Jewish practice is dynamic, always evolving to meet new circumstances and situations. Instead of being Nadavs and Abihus, Reformers view themselves as carrying on the Torah traditions of Akiva, Hillel, Maimonides, and Rashi by reverently reinterpreting and expanding the meanings and relevance of Torah. So that's a defense of the Reform position. I think Harvey did a very nice job this week in bringing the Torah portion into, Orthodox Reform polemics today. When he wrote this, there was a lot more arguing back and forth. Today, the Orthodox and Reform are so separate, there's no connections really at all. But 40, 50 years ago, the Orthodox and Reform were constantly, debating. And so this is kind of interesting. Okay, Marcia, final comment.
Well, I'm just going to ask, do you think you're saying basically that the Orthodox have become more set in their ways or more unwilling to compromise with modernity?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they've given up on the Reform, so there's no discussion back and forth. And the Reform have given up on the Orthodox.
Okay.
It's like, I guess, just like with politics, right? The way that 40, 50 years ago, the Republicans and Democrats had subtle differences, but they were very similar. So they would argue back and forth.
Right.
And the Republican would talk to Democrat and vice versa, and they'd try to convince each other of whatever policy. Today, that would be a complete waste of time. You know, the Republicans are very extreme one way, the Democrats are very extreme another way. Anyone who was in that middle group in either party's been thrown out 20, 30 years ago, such as Joe Lieberman, you know, who was a very loyal Democrat, ended up out of the party. Specter was a moderate Republican, likewise. So similar with religion, you know, religion, you have the liberal religion, the Orthodox religion, they're so far apart now, there's no point in talking to each other. But the point here is that Nadav and Abihu, it looks like they did something that really upset God, and whatever it was, there's a number of options we have here. It may have been blind ambition. It may have been ritual nonconformity. There's some other possibilities. Whatever it was, they were dead. And in that third pasuk, it says Aaron was silent. Aaron didn't say a word because I guess he knew that this was coming, and maybe he had tried to warn them. And he had two other sons who were going to go on to careers in the priesthood, and that was it. All right, over to you, Steve.
Okay, let's conclude with the blessing after the Torah study. And then, Rabbi, if you have some announcements, you can make them in. Together, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah
Torah
b'chayei olam notah b'tokeh. Baruch atah Adonai,
Adonai,
Noten haTorah.
Blessed
Blessed is Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who has given us a teaching of truth, implanting within us eternal life. Blessed is Adonai, giver of the Torah. Amen.
Amen.
Rabbi, do you have any announcements that you need to make or want to make?
Well, we have new adult ed courses starting this week. The anti-Semitism course just started, and the comparing the Gospels with the rabbinic writings is starting tomorrow.
Okay.
You're all invited. We have our monthly Saturday morning service. You can come to once a month. I'm not sure exactly the date of the next one, but it's
13th.
coming up soon.
April 13th.
And if you get a text message from me asking for gift cards, it's not me. No, I only want cash handed directly to me. $100 crisp, $100 bills, please.
Okay.
Can it be
Right off the printer.
made in can it be made in my basement at all?
Yes, absolutely. I accept
Good.
homemade money.
They're backed by cryptocurrency,
Oh, good. Okay.
by
Well,
FXX, FTX, crypto.
FTX, yes.
FTX, yeah.
Poor guy got 25 years in prison.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you,
and see
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Enjoyed it.
Have a
It
good
was
week.
quite interesting.
Rabbi,
I'll send you the information coming on Sunday, and then I'll send you a reminder on Tuesday.
thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks,
Marion,
Rabbi.
did you want to say something?
I would like to ask you to wait for a minute and let me get my calendar. I would like to set up a meeting about religious school.
Why
just to
don't you
talk-
call me so that Steve can log off?
Okay.
Okay,
Okay,
Thank
just call me
you.
right now. Bye,
Bye.
Steve. My condolences.
Thank you so much.